Imagine holding a simple cup of tea. Steam rises gently into the air, carrying an aroma so familiar that few of us stop to wonder where it came from. It feels ordinary, a comforting drink enjoyed during breakfast, shared with friends, or sipped quietly after a long day. Yet hidden inside every cup is a story that stretches back thousands of years, crossing mountains, deserts, oceans, and empires. It is a story of accidental discoveries, powerful emperors, fearless explorers, ruthless merchants, and revolutions that changed the course of history. Tea has sparked wars, built fortunes, inspired ceremonies, and transformed entire nations. It has been treated as medicine, taxed like treasure, smuggled across continents, and carried aboard ships that connected distant civilizations. Entire economies rose around its cultivation, while millions of people dedicated their lives to growing, transporting, and selling a single remarkable leaf. Today, tea is the second most consumed beverage on Earth after water. Every day, billions of cups are poured in homes, cafes, offices, and marketplaces across the globe. But before tea became an everyday comfort, it was one of history's greatest luxuries. This is the extraordinary story of how one humble plant quietly changed the world. Long before tea became a global obsession, the forests of southwestern China were home to a remarkable evergreen plant known today as Camellia sinensis. Growing naturally in mist-covered mountains and fertile valleys, its glossy green leaves had existed for thousands of years before anyone realized their remarkable potential. Like many ancient discoveries, the origins of tea are wrapped in legend rather than certainty. According to Chinese tradition, the story begins in the year 2737 BCE with the legendary Emperor Shen Nong. Revered as a wise ruler, agricultural pioneer, and father of traditional Chinese medicine, Shen Nong was said to insist that all drinking water be boiled before consumption. One day, while resting beneath a wild tea tree, a gentle breeze carried a few leaves into his pot of boiling water. Curious about the golden liquid that emerged, the emperor tasted it. Instead of discarding the unexpected mixture, he discovered a refreshing drink unlike anything he had experienced before. The beverage was pleasantly bitter, aromatic, and invigorating. According to the legend, it sharpened his mind, refreshed his body, and lifted his spirits. Whether this story happened exactly as described is impossible to know. Historians generally regard it as folklore rather than documented history, yet legends often preserve deeper truths. While Shen Nong himself may belong more to mythology than recorded history, archaeological evidence confirms that people in parts of southwestern China were using tea leaves thousands of years ago. In its earliest days, tea was not enjoyed as a relaxing beverage. It was valued primarily as medicine. Ancient healers believed tea could improve digestion, reduce fatigue, cleanse the body, and increase alertness. Some early communities chewed fresh tea leaves directly, while others crushed them into medicinal preparations. Over time, boiling the leaves became the preferred method of extracting their flavor and beneficial properties. The transformation from medicine to beverage happened gradually. As Chinese civilization expanded during the Zhou and Qin dynasties, tea spread beyond local communities. Farmers began cultivating tea plants instead of relying solely on wild forests. What had once been an herbal remedy slowly became part of everyday life. By the time of the Han Dynasty, which ruled China from 206 BCE to 220 CE, tea had become increasingly popular among scholars, nobles, and government officials. Intellectuals appreciated its ability to keep the mind alert during long hours of reading and writing. Officials found it refreshing during lengthy administrative duties. travelers discovered that dried tea leaves were easy to carry and prepare almost anywhere. Unlike alcoholic drinks, tea sharpened concentration instead of dulling it. This simple advantage would help shape entire cultures. As tea drinking spread, methods of preparation evolved. Early tea was very different from what we know today. The leaves were often steamed, compressed into dense cakes, roasted, ground into powder, and mixed with various ingredients, including ginger, onions, orange peel, spices, or even salt. To modern tea drinkers, these recipes might sound unusual, but they reflected centuries of experimentation before brewing methods became standardized. Tea was becoming more than nourishment. It was becoming culture. No period illustrates this transformation better than China's Tang Dynasty, which lasted from 618 to 907 CE. Often described as one of China's greatest golden ages, the Tang Dynasty witnessed extraordinary advances in literature, engineering, trade, religion, and the arts. Tea flourished alongside them. Cities grew larger, trade routes expanded farther than ever before, wealth increased across much of the empire. As prosperity spread, tea moved beyond royal courts and wealthy households into everyday society. Tea shops appeared in bustling cities. Merchants carried tea along expanding trade routes. Poets praised its calming qualities. Monks relied on it to remain awake during long hours of meditation. Among Buddhist monks, tea became especially valued. Meditation required sustained concentration, often lasting for many hours. Tea's natural caffeine provided gentle alertness without the intoxicating effects of alcohol. Monasteries became important centers for cultivating tea plants and refining preparation techniques. Tea and spirituality became closely connected. Many monasteries developed beautiful tea gardens, where monks carefully cultivated plants while practicing mindfulness. Preparing tea itself gradually became an act of meditation, emphasizing patience, precision, and harmony. As tea culture matured, one remarkable individual forever changed its history. His name was Lu Yu. Born during the Tang Dynasty, Lu Yu dedicated much of his life to studying every aspect of tea. He explored where tea grew best, how farmers cultivated it, how leaves should be harvested, processed, stored, brewed, and served. Around the 8th century, he completed a remarkable work known as the Classic of Tea, or Cha Jing. It became the world's first book devoted entirely to tea. Far more than a simple recipe collection, the Cha Jing examined tea's cultivation, production, equipment, preparation methods, water quality, brewing techniques, serving customs, and philosophical significance. Lu Yu argued that making tea required respect, simplicity, and balance. His work elevated tea from an ordinary drink into an art form. Even today, Lu Yu is remembered throughout China as the sage of tea. His influence extended far beyond brewing instructions. He helped establish the idea that tea represented refinement, self-discipline, and thoughtful living. Drinking tea became associated with education, wisdom, and good character. As China's influence expanded across Asia, tea traveled with merchants, diplomats, monks, and explorers. One of the first countries profoundly transformed by tea was Japan. During the 8th and 9th centuries, Japanese Buddhist monks traveled to China to study religion, philosophy, architecture, medicine, and literature. Among the many customs they brought home was tea. Initially, tea remained largely confined to monasteries and the imperial court. Seeds were planted near temples, where monks continued cultivating tea for meditation and religious ceremonies. Over time, however, Japan developed its own unique relationship with the beverage. Centuries later, tea would evolve into one of the world's most sophisticated cultural traditions, the Japanese tea ceremony, known as chanoyu. Unlike ordinary drinking, the tea ceremony emphasized harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility. Every movement, from folding the cloth to pouring the water, carried symbolic meaning. Preparing tea became less about satisfying thirst and more about appreciating the present moment. Meanwhile, back in China, tea production continued expanding rapidly. Entire regions specialized in growing different varieties. Farmers discovered that changing cultivation methods, processing techniques, altitude, climate, and harvest timing produced dramatically different flavors. Green tea retained its fresh vegetal qualities. White tea underwent minimal processing, preserving delicate floral notes. Oolong tea occupied the fascinating middle ground between green and black teas. Centuries later, fully oxidized black tea would emerge as another important variety, eventually becoming the favorite of European markets. Tea had become one of China's most valuable commodities. Caravans loaded with compressed tea bricks crossed rugged mountain passes toward Tibet, Mongolia, and Central Asia. Along these dangerous routes, tea often served not merely as merchandise but as currency itself. Tea bricks could be exchanged for horses, livestock, wool, medicines, and precious metals. In some frontier regions, tea became as valuable as coins. Few everyday objects have ever achieved such economic importance. Yet despite its growing influence throughout Asia, much of the rest of the world remained completely unaware that this remarkable drink even existed. That would soon change. And when it did, tea would leave the mountains of China to reshape global commerce, ignite fierce rivalries between powerful empires, and eventually play a surprising role in one of history's most famous revolutions. For centuries, tea remained one of Asia's best-kept treasures. Merchants traveling along the Silk Road occasionally carried small quantities westward, but the journey was long, expensive, and dangerous. By the time the leaves reached distant markets, they had become a luxury few could afford. Most Europeans had never seen tea, let alone tasted it. That began to change during the Age of Exploration. By the 16th century, European nations were racing to establish new trade routes across the oceans. Portuguese ships reached China in the early 1500s, opening the first direct maritime connections between Europe and East Asia. Along with silk, porcelain, and spices, they encountered an unfamiliar beverage that Chinese merchants had been perfecting for centuries. At first, tea attracted little attention. Europe's appetite was still focused on spices, whose extraordinary prices promised enormous profits. Tea was simply another exotic curiosity from a distant land. The Dutch saw something different. In the early 17th century, the Dutch East India Company began importing tea into Europe on a commercial scale. The first shipments were small, but demand grew surprisingly fast. Wealthy merchants and aristocrats became fascinated by the mysterious drink from China. Tea soon became a symbol of elegance and refinement. Its rarity made it expensive. Owning fine porcelain tea sets became a display of wealth, while serving tea to guests signaled sophistication and status. Across Europe, fashionable households competed to acquire the finest Chinese teas. England arrived slightly later, but its relationship with tea would become unlike any other. In 1662, Catherine of Braganza, a Portuguese princess and devoted tea drinker, married King Charles II of England. She brought with her the custom of drinking tea, introducing the beverage to the English royal court. What began as a royal preference quickly became a national obsession. The British East India Company recognized tea's enormous commercial potential. Originally established to trade spices and other valuable goods, the company increasingly devoted its resources to importing Chinese tea. Ship after ship sailed from Asia carrying chests packed with carefully processed leaves. Demand exploded. As tea became more popular, Britain developed an insatiable appetite. By the 18th century, millions of pounds of tea were entering the country every year. But there was a problem. China wanted little that Britain produced. Chinese merchants accepted payment primarily in silver, and enormous quantities of British silver flowed eastward to pay for tea. This growing trade imbalance alarmed British officials, who desperately searched for a solution. That search would eventually lead to one of history's most controversial chapters. The answer they chose was opium. British merchants began exporting opium, cultivated in British-controlled India, into China. Despite repeated attempts by Chinese authorities to stop the trade, opium addiction spread rapidly throughout the country. When the Chinese government finally moved to suppress the illegal trade, Britain responded with military force. The Opium Wars, fought between 1839 and 1842, and again from 1856 to 1860, reshaped relations between China and the Western powers. China was forced to sign unequal treaties, open additional ports to foreign trade, and surrender Hong Kong to Britain. It remains one of the darkest episodes in the history of global commerce. Ironically, the world's favorite comforting drink had become deeply connected to conflict, addiction, and imperial ambition. Tea was influencing history in another remarkable way across the Atlantic. In Britain's American colonies, tea was enormously popular. Colonists drank it daily, importing vast quantities from the British East India Company. To raise revenue after costly wars, the British government imposed a series of taxes on the colonies, including taxes on tea. The colonists were furious. Their complaint was simple. They were being taxed by a government in which they had no political representation. The slogan became famous, "No taxation without representation." On the night of December 16, 1773, a group of colonists disguised themselves as members of the Mohawk Nation and boarded 3 British ships anchored in Boston Harbor. Working quickly, they broke open 342 chests of tea and dumped their contents into the icy water. The event became known as the Boston Tea Party. Although no one was killed that night, the political consequences were enormous. Britain responded with harsh punishments. The colonies responded with increasing resistance. Within 2 years, the American Revolutionary War had begun. It is astonishing to think that one everyday beverage played such a symbolic role in the birth of the United States. Meanwhile, Britain faced another challenge. Almost all of its tea still came from China. Relying on a single foreign supplier for one of the nation's most beloved products was risky and expensive. British botanists and explorers searched for ways to cultivate tea elsewhere. Their breakthrough came in northeastern India. In the forests of Assam, they discovered native tea plants growing naturally. Unlike the Chinese variety, these plants produced larger leaves and thrived in the region's tropical climate. The British established vast tea plantations throughout Assam and later in Darjeeling. Soon afterward, tea cultivation expanded into Ceylon, now known as Sri Lanka. Ironically, this expansion happened because another crop had failed. During the 19th century, a devastating fungal disease destroyed much of Ceylon's coffee plantations. Rather than abandon the land, farmers replaced coffee with tea. The decision transformed the island forever. Today, Sri Lanka remains one of the world's leading tea producers, exporting millions of kilograms every year. Behind these thriving plantations, however, lay another difficult reality. Tea cultivation required enormous amounts of labor. Millions of workers, many recruited under harsh colonial systems, spent long days planting, harvesting, and processing leaves under demanding conditions. The prosperity generated by the global tea trade often came at tremendous human cost. Yet despite these complex histories, tea continued weaving itself into everyday life. In Britain, afternoon tea emerged during the 19th century. Anna, the Duchess of Bedford, reportedly began requesting tea and light refreshments in the late afternoon to satisfy the long gap between lunch and dinner. The habit soon spread through aristocratic society. Elegant gatherings featuring tea, delicate sandwiches, cakes, and pastries became fashionable social occasions. Eventually, afternoon tea became one of Britain's most recognizable cultural traditions. Elsewhere, tea evolved in countless different ways. In India, chai blended black tea with milk, sugar, ginger, cardamom, cinnamon, cloves, and other spices, creating one of the world's most flavorful beverages. In Morocco, green tea combined with fresh mint became a powerful symbol of hospitality. In Tibet, butter tea provided warmth and energy at high altitudes. In Taiwan, innovative entrepreneurs eventually created bubble tea, combining sweet milk tea with chewy tapioca pearls. Each culture made tea its own. Yet every variation still traced its ancestry back to a small evergreen plant growing in the mountains of China thousands of years ago. Modern science has also helped explain why tea became so beloved. Tea naturally contains caffeine, which stimulates the central nervous system and improves alertness. But unlike coffee, tea also contains an amino acid called L-theanine. Researchers have found that L-theanine may promote relaxation while working alongside caffeine to improve focus and attention. This unusual combination helps explain why many people describe tea as both calming and energizing at the same time. Tea is also rich in plant compounds known as polyphenols. These natural antioxidants have been studied for their potential role in supporting cardiovascular health and reducing cellular damage, although scientists continue to investigate their long-term effects. Even after thousands of years, tea continues revealing new secrets. Today, more than 6 billion cups of tea are consumed every single day. It is grown across Asia, Africa, South America, and beyond. From luxury hotels to roadside cafes, from ancient temples to modern office buildings, tea remains one of humanity's most familiar companions. Yet most people never pause to consider the extraordinary journey hidden inside each cup. Every sip connects us to forgotten forests, legendary emperors, Buddhist monks, daring sailors, powerful trading companies, colonial plantations, scientific discoveries, and revolutions that reshaped nations. Tea is no longer merely a drink. It is a living record of human civilization. The next time you pour hot water over a handful of leaves or lift a warm cup to your lips, remember that you are participating in a tradition that began thousands of years ago beneath the shade of a wild tree in ancient China. Few everyday objects have traveled farther, few have influenced more lives, and few have left a deeper mark on the story of our world. If you enjoyed uncovering the hidden history behind one of the world's most beloved everyday objects, you're exactly the kind of curious mind this channel was created for. Because here at Exhibit A, Everyday Objects, every ordinary thing has an extraordinary story waiting to be discovered. Subscribe to Exhibit A, Everyday Objects, where every ordinary object has an extraordinary story waiting to be uncovered. And if you'd like to continue the journey, watch our documentary on the history of sugar to discover how another everyday ingredient shaped empires, fueled global trade, and changed the course of human history. Until next time, thanks for watching.